Ryan to root for Claressa. I really am. I ain't gonna lie. I got a little bothered when her cousin did an interview. Now, I allowed the interview because I'm messy. I'm a messy bitch like that. You feel me? I can't help who I am. But I did feel just a little bit sorry for Claressa when her cousin Shalita came on my platform and literally, I said, what are people saying that you dragging her down? So?
What if everything you stood up for was never devotion to begin with? According to Tasha K, this story was never driven by gossip. This was about proof that had to be checked slowly, in silence, off-screen, outside the public eye. She says the truth didn't arrive as one explosion. It arrived in pieces. Timelines overlapping where they shouldn't. Identical voice notes landing in different phones. The same explanations reused, only redirected to new inboxes. And while Claressa Shields appeared unshaken in public, posting power, posting affection, posting faith, behind closed doors, the cracks were already spreading. Tasha K says warnings were sent her way. More than once. But Claressa was operating from love mode, trust mode, standing up for a loyalty that was never really there. Because based on what was uncovered, Papoose wasn't hiding a single secret. He was running a framework. 5 women, 5 positions. 1 for emotional grounding, 1 condition to stay silent, 1 from the past that never fully disappeared, 1 newly added, and 1 reserved as the next move. This wasn't disorder. It was design. And Claressa, knowingly or not, was positioned inside something that was never built with her safety in mind. The moment everything broke didn't unfold online. It unfolded quietly. On Christmas. The day she thought belonged to them was already claimed. That's where the unraveling started, not with sobs, not under lights, but with awareness. Because when love is revealed to be strategic, the real question isn't who deceived first. It's who remains when denial is no longer an option.
On this Christmas with him, this very special Christmas with him, yeah. Apparently, Claressa spent Christmas alone in the Louis Vuitton store, racking up about $30,000 in bills this Christmas. Okay, Papoose was with his family.
Tasha K didn't lead with theatrics. She led with conviction. This isn't gossip, she said. This is documentation. And that distinction mattered. Because according to her, this wasn't a story she rushed into. This was something she held onto. Studied in silence. Verified away from timelines. Checked without spectacle. Names were locked in. Dates were laid side by side. Behaviors were tracked. And when everything finally aligned, what emerged wasn't just relationship drama, it was something far more deliberate. She claimed several people attempted to alert Claressa Shields long before the internet sensed trouble. Not loudly, not for attention, just hushed conversations, careful hints, small inconsistencies that didn't quite fit. But Claressa, according to Tasha, was operating in love mode. And love mode has a way of muting alarms. She believed the devotion she was being shown. She believed the comfort. She believed the version of events that made her feel selected. What she didn't understand, not at that point, was that devotion wasn't being betrayed in a single place. It was being distributed. The first detonation, 5, not 1. Tasha K's initial revelation shifted the entire scale of the story. This wasn't about one other woman. It wasn't about one slip. It wasn't even about one hidden affair. According to what she pieced together, Papoose was involved with 5 different women at the same time, each assigned a specific space in his life. 1 filled the role of emotional anchor, someone he leaned into, confided in, maintained steady contact with. Another existed quietly, minimal exposure, no posts, intentionally kept invisible. There was also a connection from the past that never fully closed. Shared history, familiar comfort, a door that stayed unlocked. Then came a newer encounter, impulsive, brief, but still ongoing. And finally, there was one more woman described as a reserve. Someone close enough to keep interest alive, but vague enough to avoid commitment. Tasha K didn't describe this as disorder. She described it as intention. He wasn't dating, she said. He was operating a system. And within that system, every woman had a function. Proof without flash.
Sorry for Claressa when she was in there blowing a bag, 30,000, and then she had to take the bag to Papoose and acted as if Papoose gave her the bag.
You give me nothing from Louis for real. I don't know why you did that, but you didn't. You didn't have to.
It's Christmas.
You didn't have to give me nothing from Louis, but
This moment carried weight. Because for Tasha K, this was never about money. It was about patterns. The pause. The stumble. The performance layered over the truth. It's the smallest details that usually expose what grand declarations are meant to distract from. According to Tasha K, the real shift didn't come from a blow-up. It didn't happen on social media. It didn't play out in public view at all. It happened on Christmas. She claimed Claressa spent that day by herself. The reason she was given sounded harmless, family commitments. But the reality, according to the exposé, cut much deeper. Papoose wasn't unavailable. He wasn't alone. He was with Remy Ma and his daughter. And that distinction changed the entire meaning of the moment. Tasha K didn't soften it. The holiday Claressa believed belonged to them had already been claimed. What made it sting wasn't just the dishonesty, it was how it was packaged. Claressa was told, family comes first. Yet she was never truly placed inside that family space. While this played out privately, the public-facing story told something else entirely. Claressa kept posting couple moments, memories, encouraging captions. From the outside, it appeared solid, grounded, safe. But according to Tasha K, the private reality felt off. He was emotionally checked out. Talk of the future stayed unclear. Choices were made without her voice in the room. As the story summed it up, she was producing girlfriend optics. He was quietly preparing an exit. When the headline says, Claressa collapses, Tasha K clarified, this wasn't physical. There was no public sobbing. No viral breakdown. No dramatic clip caught mid-emotion. This collapse was subtler. It was the breakdown of trust. The breakdown of certainty. The breakdown of the reality she had been defending out loud. This wasn't an emotional meltdown, Tasha K said. It was a moment of clarity.
LV store on Christmas because she couldn't attend the family gatherings, even though she says she's family. And she says that Papoose is divorcing Remy, even though the last time I saw, I don't know if things are being done, is that Remy withdrew from that divorce. I don't think she...
This wasn't rumor fuel. This was force. Because if a divorce wasn't actually progressing, then nothing was truly being resolved. No clean departures. No fresh beginnings. Just people frozen inside emotional uncertainty. Why the unfinished divorce mattered according to Tasha K. The divorce discussion was never about legal status, it was about control. As long as everything stayed unresolved, leverage stayed exactly where it belonged. No conclusion meant no responsibility. No filings meant no public reckoning. And for someone managing multiple emotional lanes, unfinished business was useful. It kept everyone guessing. It preserved flexibility. It allowed narratives to shift. It delayed reactions. And inside that fog, Claressa carried emotional weight without holding real authority. Public poise, private strain on the surface, Claressa still looked steady. No emotional posts. No blame. No public unraveling. But according to Tasha K, the internal pressure was building. She described a woman split between what she felt and what she had already defended out loud. Because once you champion a version of events publicly, reversing course becomes humiliating. And humiliation, more than heartbreak, is what traps people in silence longer than it should. The price of being the strong one. Tasha K pointed to a familiar pattern she says shows up again and again. The woman labeled strongest is often expected to endure the most damage quietly. No one rushes to shield her. No one assumes she might be unsure. No one questions her certainty. They assume she's okay. But strength doesn't soften realization. It only postpones when the pain becomes visible. Silence as control. As the claim spread, the absence of response grew louder than any denial. No detailed counterstatement. No corrected timelines. No evidence offered to disprove the narrative. According to Tasha K, that absence was intentional. When proof exists, she said, quiet becomes power. Because every spoken word can be scrutinized, every phrase replayed. Silence leaves nothing to interrogate. The story turns inward, not toward the women, not toward the speculation, but toward the decision. Claressa's shields, within this framing, stood at a psychological divide. One direction required leaving publicly, decisively, without return. The other required staying quietly, carefully, inside a structure she now recognized. Neither option was simple. Both carried consequences. And neither could be delayed indefinitely. Because once a system is understood, it can't be unseen. This story is no longer about revelation. It's about timing. About when silence breaks. About when choices are made. About when strength stops being an image and becomes self-preservation. And the most dangerous moment still hasn't arrived. Because the real collapse isn't explosive. It's the instant she chooses whether to guard the image or finally protect herself. By this point, the narrative isn't advancing. It's constricting. Because when a system is exposed, it doesn't implode on cue. It pushes back. It tightens its grip. It applies pressure in the exact places where silence has always held before. According to the framework Tasha K described, this is the stage where everything appears still on the surface, while momentum builds underneath. No fresh statements. No explosive showdowns. No public recognition. Just waiting. And waiting in situations like this is never passive. The moment after knowing there's a moment that comes after awareness, a quiet one, when the mind stops negotiating with doubt. This is when the question shifts from, could this be true, to, how long has this been happening? According to Tasha K, this is the space Claressa's shields entered. No longer confused. No longer searching for explanations. No longer decoding intent. Just sitting with the weight of what was already visible. Because when patterns repeat with precision, denial stops offering relief and starts draining you. The price of clarity doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels exposing. Because clarity forces you to replay every defense you made for someone who didn't earn it. Every warning you brushed aside. Every moment you became the shield for a narrative quietly working against you. Tasha K suggested Claressa's collapse didn't need spectacle. It happened inwardly. A recalibration. A sudden understanding that her strength had been used against her, not through force, but through expectation. She was strong, so she'd endure. She was confident, so she wouldn't question. She was visible, so she'd protect the image. Until the image stopped offering protection. The system's last strategy, delay by part 3, the silence carried a new tone. It wasn't just evasion. It was endurance. Because according to Tasha K, systems like this don't rush conclusions. They wait for exhaustion. They depend on the belief that attention will wander. That outrage will cool. That the person holding the emotional weight will eventually choose the least disruptive path. Silence isn't emptiness. It's pressure without fingerprints. And the longer nothing is said, the more responsibility quietly shifts, not onto the person who caused the damage, but onto the person expected to respond with grace. When strength becomes a snare, there's a cruel irony in visible strength. People stop checking in. They stop asking if you're okay. They stop considering uncertainty. It forces acknowledgement that what you defended was never what you believed it was. Staying, however, demands a different cost. It requires compartmentalization. It requires silence. It requires living with knowledge you can't erase. Neither choice promises peace. They simply offer different losses. Tasha K's closing position Tasha K made it clear she wasn't steering Claressa toward a specific outcome. She wasn't calling for confrontation. She wasn't demanding statements. She wasn't turning this into spectacle. She framed it as an accounting. This isn't about exposing a woman, she said. It's about exposing a pattern. A pattern where power survives through ambiguity. Where accountability is postponed through quiet. Where women are expected to absorb emotional fallout discreetly, especially when they are capable, accomplished, and visibly resilient. According to Tasha K, Claressa's strength was never the flaw. The flaw was that her strength made the system comfortable. When quiet stops working, there comes a moment when silence stops being useful. When it no longer protects reputations. when it no longer preserves options. And instead, it begins corroding trust beyond repair. Tasha K suggested that moment was nearing, because once people recognize a system, they stop waiting for confirmation. They start observing behavior. And behavior, unlike statements, can't be revised. Who shows up? Who avoids clarity? Who keeps doors open instead of closing chapters? Those actions tell their own story. The true meaning of collapse by the end of part 3, the word collapse reveals its full weight. It was never about tears. Never about headlines. Never about public shame. It was about the collapse of illusion. The belief that loyalty was shared. The belief that visibility meant priority. The belief that silence ensured safety. Tasha K framed this as the most dangerous collapse because it demands movement. Once you recognize the structure, you can't remain inside it comfortably. Where this really concludes this story doesn't conclude with exposure. It concludes with a choice. A choice Claressa Shields will make privately long before anyone else sees it. Whether she chooses distance or confrontation. Whether she chooses quiet or clarity. Whether she chooses to preserve the image or preserve herself. That moment can't be scripted. Because the real collapse isn't what the audience witnesses. It's the instant she decides whether to walk away or stay within the chaos, fully aware of what it is. This is where the story stops being entertainment and turns into a decision with consequences. Because once the noise fades, once the clips stop circulating, once the comments slow down, one truth remains sitting in the middle of all of it. Nothing that was exposed can be unseen. According to what has been laid out, this was never about one lie. It was about a structure that thrived on silence, overlap, and emotional convenience. And when a structure like that cracks, it doesn't collapse loudly. It waits. Claressa Shields now stands in a moment most people never see coming until it's already there. Not a public breakdown. Not a viral rant. But a private reckoning. The kind that forces you to replay every defense, every excuse you made for someone else, every time you chose trust over instinct. That's the real damage. Not heartbreak, realization. And realization doesn't scream. It suffocates. If 5 women were real. If Christmas was never hers. If loyalty was just multitasking with better timing. Then the question isn't what happened. The question is what happens next. Because silence from one side is not peace. It's positioning. And silence from the other side is not weakness. It's a calculation between dignity and exposure. Walking away costs pride. Staying costs self-respect. Either choice leaves a scar. This is not a story about villains and victims. It's about power, access, and who pays the emotional price when the truth surfaces too late. And the most dangerous part isn't what was said. It's what hasn't been denied. So now it's on you. Do you think this was a system or a coincidence? Was Claressa the main woman or just the loudest one? And when the receipts are real, how long can silence actually survive? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this before it disappears into the timeline. And remember, the real collapse never happens in public. It happens the moment someone decides whether to protect the image or finally protect themselves.